Hello friends, we're back with another video about the Rollei 35. So if you haven't seen the previous video, this was a Rollei 35 that I inherited from my grandfather earlier this year. So in that video I go through this and I kind of explain the camera and I show one roll of expired color film that I shot with it. But today I wanted to go through a roll of black and white street photography film that I shot. So this happened in July. My company's head office is in Tokyo. So it's the first time I'd visited Tokyo since I had, well, any film cameras, but definitely this camera. So I thought, okay, I'm going to one of the biggest cities in the world. I have this new camera that's famous for its use in street photography. So why don't I shoot a roll of black and white film on the streets of Tokyo and just see how it goes. So just for reference, I shot this on on a roll of Ilford HV5 Plus. So this is, yeah, black and white film, ISO 400. Before this, I had shot a couple rolls of on my Minolta of the let's see, using Fujifilm Acros 102. But when I went to buy another roll of this, it had almost doubled in price. I think it went from maybe 1,200 yen to about 2,100 yen just in the course of a couple months. I get the impression film is just getting more expensive everywhere across the board. But fortunately, the Ilford was available at a reasonable price. I think maybe like 1,100, 1,200 yen. So that's maybe $8 or $9 at the moment. And maybe it's going to get more expensive too. But it was a good roll of film, and I really liked being able to do some street photography with this camera. So I'll get into the pictures first, and then I'll talk about the experience after that. So let's start in with the pictures. So this is one of the earlier shots I had. This was just an everyday scene, people walking to work. And it kind of establishes that this film, when I bought it, it said it would have a good dynamic range. It would be forgiving of underexposure and overexposure. And I think that's the case. We can see the skies washed out, and this is a bright July morning. And keeping the sky in, keeping the sky without, keeping the sky from getting flooded with light like that, and having the ground in focus would probably be very hard for, well, almost any 35 millimeter film, I would think. But this turned out pretty well. We see a good mix of light and shadow here. This this picture isn't particularly interesting. I'll try and get to some photos I thought turned out a little better. But this is one example of the kind of shots I could get. And here was another one at Shinjuku Station. As you can see, good balance of light and shadow. Everything's pretty visible. Sky is overexposed again, but maybe keeping it properly exposed would really harm the shadows. I don't know. Here's a couple of my coworkers getting lunch, and I found that keeping the range very close, in the range of 3-4 feet, does give a lot of kind of pleasant bokeh out in the further regions like that. So using the rangefinder was a lot. It was a lot. I wouldn't say easier, but it was a lot more successful than I thought it would be. You have to pre-plan where you're shooting. It's not like a modern day digital camera where you have autofocus. You have to pre-plan it, but keeping things close or keeping things far wasn't too hard. I was able to get good in-focus shots like this with a clear subject visible and the other areas out of focus. So that was nice. This bicycle was another one that turned out very well, actually. The blend of color here, I think, lent good contrast for black and white. This was probably in the afternoon in a somewhat shaded area. And also this also illustrated that it does give a this lens does keep things in pretty sharp focus if it's within the focal range. Like some of the weeds here are actually quite sharp focused. Looks pretty nice. And just the balance of black and white in this bicycle photo I thought turned out really well. It was probably one of the best rolls, one of the best shots on the roll. And it also worked fairly well at night. Even this was well after the sun went down, getting just ambient street lights. I wish I remember what the aperture and the shutter speed was set at. I didn't make memos or anything like that. But given enough light, it can shoot sort of interesting night photos like this as well. But this was an escalator in a subway station, and this was it was underexposed, and it creates kind of a cool effect. But probably maybe slightly longer shutter speed would have helped this actually turn into a photo that with something visible. But I thought it turned out kind of cool. And before we continue, I have one thing that I neglected to point out earlier. Street photography in Japan is in somewhat of I don't want to say it's on shaky legal grounds, but I think law and tradition kind of dictate that you should never shoot a photo of anybody in public if they don't have their consent. I think, on the other hand, I see it violated all the time. Like when I was an English teacher, I had times where I was visiting a school as part of like an English day or something, and my photo has been in newspapers, and I certainly didn't sign anything. But in general, I think if you post photos in public, you shouldn't show people's faces if they're recognizable. So for a couple of these photos, they did turn out well, but I'm gonna blur the faces out, and I'm sorry that's gonna be a little bit jarring. But it's just kind of, I think it's the maybe it's the safest way to go about this. I don't want to post this up and then have someone come back later saying like, "Hey, you can't put my face on YouTube or whatever." So for a few of these, I'm gonna have to blur faces that are close enough to be recognizable. And it also means there's a couple great shots I got, which I'm probably not going to be able to include just because if I blur someone's face on a very interesting picture of them, then it kind of it sort of destroys the point, I guess. But so yeah, sorry that a couple of these are just going to be a little bit strange with the blurred faces. So let's get back to the pictures. So this was one I thought turned out really well. As I was shooting, I realized areas that had this sharp contrast in between light and shadow, this being the middle of the summer, you could find spots where some person might be coming into and out of light that would look kind of highlight them like this. So unfortunately, I have to blur her face, but this was a really good spot. I wish I'd stuck around and got a few more pictures, but it was kind of obvious that I was standing here taking photos, so it was a little hard to get candid subjects. But I like that. I like that this one turned out a lot. I think, yeah, maybe another 20, 30 minutes there, I probably could have gotten some very interesting and dramatic shots. But having, yeah, someone coming out of the shade right there highlights them very well, I think. And this picture is fairly unremarkable, but it does illustrate that it's a little hard to keep the camera from getting skewed. There's no indicator to say whether it's kind of horizontally balanced the way there is on a lot of modern digital cameras. So sometimes you can get an interesting shot, but you get it back and it's sort of uneven like this. And if you scan it, you can straighten it out a little bit, but you might lose a little bit of resolution. And this is probably my favorite photo out of all the ones I took. This is it's near Shinjuku Station. There's a famous restaurant there called Naganoya. And I found this interesting spot where there's this bridge and a lot of people walking by. And I realized that they would be silhouetted because this is just the middle of the day, very bright out, but they're walking under this dark bridge. So I sat here for about 15 or 20 minutes trying to get people with interesting silhouettes to walk by. But it was a little challenging because people walking in front of me all the time, and you might have you might have somebody with an interesting hat or something that's about to walk by, but then someone walks in front of you right as you're taking the picture. So it's a great spot. I think if I'd hung out there longer, I probably could have taken a whole roll full of interesting pictures in silhouette here. But yeah, you do run into some limits where the world isn't just going to agree to be your candid photo shoot or anything like that. But I really liked how this turned out. I think this woman's wearing a kimono, probably there with boyfriend or husband, then just walking through. So I took a couple more shots at this spot, but none of them were quite as good. Of course, if I were shooting silhouettes, my digital camera might be a little better at that because I could edit the balance of shadow later. But there's something about doing it on film, just right there, that's pretty fun as well. And yeah, we have one more here. You can see the Naganoya banner there in the background, and you have to get very split-second timing because people are walking by really quick, and because this is a fixed prime lens, you're not going to be able to zoom to get to get them framed perfectly. So if I do this again next time, I'm probably going to hang out at this spot again and take as many photos as I can if it's a sunny day. And one thing I found is that setting the focus to infinity wasn't always a guarantee that the farthest areas would be in focus. These two shots were done, I think, near Shinjuku Station. I was waiting for my bus to take me back, and it was at the very end of the roll, so I thought, okay, you never know quite if you have one picture left, two picture left. So I was just taking the last couple shots, wanted to see what the equivalent of a landscape photo might look like with this. They were both, I think, probably at infinite focus, but you can tell that almost nothing is in focus right here. I don't know if it was just because, if it was the lighting, if I maybe shook the camera a little bit. I had one more of this building right here that did seem to be a little more in focus. That was probably also at infinite, but I found that on one of the Minolta lenses as well. Sometimes infinite focus on maybe film lenses, maybe that's something I need to be more cautious about. Maybe I need to step that back just a tad to get slightly better focus. But I'll have to experiment with that a little more, I suppose. And I also found that shooting into crowds of people like this, I thought I would just, okay, walk through sort of busy crosswalks and things, try and get snapshots of a bunch of people at the same time and hope that one of them could be picked out and find something interesting about them. But it just didn't work very well in large crowds like this. It's more discreet that way. Most people are walking and they're not going to notice a camera going off. But I didn't really find any interesting crowd pictures like this. Instead, I found that photos with a clear subject like this, especially if the subject wasn't paying attention, like this guy reading a book and walking along, those are the ones I thought turned out the best or were the most interesting. So I think on the next roll, I'm probably going to avoid crowds, hopefully try to focus on one person, and then see if I can get some good photos that way. But that also makes these harder to share, because if I am in Japan sharing a photo of somebody who's candid like this that I don't know, it's probably going to be very hard to post it online or talk about it with anyone. So it was a lot of fun. It was just a lot more fun than I thought it would be to shoot the street photography with this camera. You kind of have to think about the world in a very different way. You're looking at the light, you're looking at the motion of people around you. You're trying to get that perfect moments where they're doing something or kind of acting in a way or walking across something that makes them stand out and look interesting. I found that I wasn't able to include these pictures, but I found that people did notice the camera. I mean, not everybody, but one thing is, looking like I do, I obviously stand out in Tokyo or anywhere in Japan. I'm kind of, I'm clearly not from around here. And while this camera is small, I mean, people are going to notice you taking it up to your eye like that and taking a picture, even if you're really quick about it. So I have several pictures where I did get someone like riding by on a bike or something like that, or walking past, and they're looking right at the camera. So it's obvious that they're seeing me take the picture. And you can get away with that in Tokyo. I mean, no one's going to hassle you or anything like that. But I could see if you're in a city that you're maybe unfamiliar with or might be a little rougher than Tokyo, then you might get people kind of mad at you, or they might notice you're distracted with the camera and you might become a target for something. So while I think this is a lot of fun, I guess you have to know your environment well and be very patient if you're a street photographer. But overall, I just had tons of fun with this. I really liked how these pictures turned out, and I can't wait to do it again. Next time in Tokyo, I'm definitely next time that I go to Tokyo, I'm definitely going to get another roll or two of black and white film and shoot another roll. So I think I have two more rolls that I developed alongside this. One black and white and one with that color expired film on the Minolta. And I just got a call that another roll of color film was developed on the Minolta. So I've got several more film videos coming up. So I hope people have enjoyed these, and I'll see you next time.